Governor Greg Abbott from the great state of Texas. Welcome, Governor. How are you, sir?
Doing great. How you doing, Glenn?
I'm good. So, what a week you've had. The Democrats walk out, and let's set the record straight. What exactly, we know what they're saying is in the bill. What is actually in the bill that they walked away from?
Great point, because what is in the bill is completely different than what they are saying, what Kamala Harris is saying, what President Biden is saying. What's in the bill actually increases the number of hours that people have to vote in the state of Texas. In the state of Texas, we have at least 12 days of early voting, and we are adding hours to those days. And on top of that, we are giving people time off from work to be able to go vote. Bottom line, we're making it easier to vote in the state of Texas. By the way, in comparison, Delaware, the state that President Biden votes in, has exactly 0 hours of early voting. If anyone wants to go after a state that's engaging in voter suppression because of lack of time to vote early, it should be people going after Delaware, not the state of Texas. That said, Glenn, there is one thing that we are doing in the state of Texas, and that is we are making sure that we tighten the reins on mail-in ballots that can lead to voter fraud. And it's not me saying that. It is a federal judge appointed by Barack Obama in Corpus Christi, Texas, who wrote in a legal opinion that voter fraud occurs, quote, in abundance as it concerns mail-in ballots. We know, Texans know, there is fraud in mail-in ballots in the state of Texas. It must be fixed, and that's one thing that we are trying to do. But that said, all of these claims, and we're denying people the right to vote, yada, 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 are completely false.
I have to tell you, Governor, I don't know what to do with the lies anymore. You know, it used to be you got to watch their language carefully. They're just out and out lies now that are being said. And most Americans agree with, even Democrats, voter ID. Most people agree with, hey, let's just make sure that all of the real ballots count, and we make sure no fake ballots or distorted ballots are counted. Every American should agree with that.
And that's exactly what Texas is achieving. But let's go back to the first point that you made, and that is the lies. When Democrats do not have truth on their side, they resort to one single word, and that is racism. They say that Texas is being racist by doing this. And you talked about voter ID. So Texas implemented voter ID almost a decade ago. And when we went through that fight, what word did they use? Racism. That Texas is engaging in racism. This is going to hurt people of color, yada, yada, yada. Guess what? After Texas imposed voter ID requirements in the state of Texas, there have been more people vote, more people of color who went to vote. Voting didn't get harder. It got easier and more abundant in the state of Texas. And so once again, Democrats have absolutely no legal standing other than to say, oh, racism, racism, racism. And what they have done, because they use the term so much, it means that there really is no substance to the term anymore.
Mm-hmm. And it's sad because real racism does exist, and we should do everything we can to fight real racism. But if somebody is always crying rape, you stop hearing. It's like car alarms. When car alarms first started, I mean, car alarm would go off and everybody would look. Now car alarms look. There could be a guy standing there with a hammer and nobody looks at it. They're like, oh, whatever. It's somebody's car alarm. The thing you said this week was that you were going to go in and you will arrest them when they come in, when they come back to Texas. Is that a real promise? Will you really arrest them when they come back into the state?
Yeah, let me explain how this works. And so whenever there is a break of quorum, which is what has happened now, meaning that there is not a sufficient number of people who are showing up to the Texas House of Representatives for the Texas House to engage in business, whenever there is a quorum break like that, the House issues what's called a call on the House. And when that happens, the sergeant at arms is authorized to work with the Texas Department of Public Safety to, you can call it arrest, apprehend, whatever you want to call it, any of the members who are not in the Texas House of Representatives and bring them to the Texas House, where they will be cabined in the Texas House with no ability to leave the Texas House chamber without a permission slip from the Speaker. And this is exactly what will happen. The only limitation to it is, one, the fact that Texas law enforcement officers do not have jurisdiction authority beyond our state boundaries. And that's exactly why they're not up there in Washington, D.C., putting these Texas Democrats who are on the run under arrest and bringing them back to Texas. However, once they do return to Texas, if they fail to show up to do the duty that they ran for, and that is to go to the Capitol and cast votes, if they don't show up to the Capitol, the Texas Department of Public Safety will be sent out to bring them back in.
Okay, so
to the Capitol.
It's not an arrest as people think of an arrest. It is they will pick you up and take you to the Capitol, and you can't leave the Capitol until your job is done.
Right. It's not an arrest for a crime.
Got it.
It's an arrest to bring them back to the Capitol, to force them to do their job. Now, think about that. Are you being forced to do your job? Are your listeners being forced to do their job? What would happen to your listeners if they decided, well, I don't like the way things are going here, and I'm not winning at my job here. I'm going to walk off the job and still expect to get paid. That's exactly what these Democrats are doing. And just like your listeners, if they walked off the job, they would be fired. They would lose their paycheck. And that, mark my words, that's exactly what's going to happen to these Democrats who have fled the state of Texas, because Texans do not approve of people, especially the people they voted in office, walking off the job and not doing their job.
Have you seen any polls on this at all? I mean, I can't believe. I would be really angry if the Republicans walked out of Congress right now. I mean, they're not getting anything done. They can't pass anything. But if they walked off the job, I'd be really pissed at them. Have you seen any polling? How is this going to work out for these guys?
So we have seen polling. There's an organization in Texas called the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and they did a poll on this within the last week, showing that those members who walk off the job, there is a great disapproval rating among all demographic groups. So I have it in front of me right now. It's texaspolicy.com, and the title of it is Texans Oppose Walkouts to Avoid Votes. And that's why I know for a fact that these members, when they return and ask their constituents for support again, it's going to look very, very bad for them. We saw this once before. There's history for this in the state of Texas, because when we were going through redistricting a decade or so ago, the Democrats fled the state. Once again, they first went to Ardmore, Oklahoma, then they went to Albuquerque, New Mexico, to evade being arrested in the state of Texas, and things turned out bad for them at the ballot box. And this time it's even worse, because there are so many issues that we have on this special session call. In addition to election integrity, we have property tax reform. We can reduce your property taxes in Texas if the Democrats in the Texas House showed up. There's bail reform. Senator Joan Huffman said that since the Democrats left and broke quorum initially in late May, there had been 5 people in the state of Texas murdered by people who were out on bail. We've got to fix a broken bail system in the state of Texas. So there's going to be blood on the hands of the Democrats who failed to show up and do their job.